hopefully you guys have read this too, or you're going to read this amazing book. It's about time. Jeff Porcaro, the man and his music. I have Robyn Flans, the author, and the guys from Hudson Music, my old friend Rob Wallis, and Joe Bergamini, and some other special guests that are going to join us and talk about this book. I won't get into too much right now because, oh, that's a friend calling right now. I have to call him back. But I've got some Jeff stories that maybe I'll get into later if there's time, but I really just want to get these guys on here now because there's so much to talk about this book without giving too much of it away, because we want you to buy it if you haven't already bought it. It's such a great book. Robyn did an amazing job. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on, and I didn't mention Gary Grimm. I think I mentioned ahead of time that Gary was going to be here. But Gary is also joining us. He was Jeff's drum tech for a period of time in the 80s. And he's tech for a million people, an old friend of mine, but he's got some great insights and stories, and he's mentioned in the book quite a bit. So thought it'd be fun to have him be part of this. And yeah, so I'm going to bring on Robyn Flans, Rob Wallis, Joe Bergamini, and Gary Grimm. Hang tight, here they come. All right. Okay, guys. It took me a minute to get the figure out the stream, but we're live now. So here we go.
Wow.
Yeah. Please welcome to the show, Robyn Flans, the author. Yeah. That's how about that? And Rob Wallis from Hudson Music, owner of Hudson Music, Joe Bergamini from Hudson Music, and the legendary drum tech, Gary Grimm, who worked with Jeff, and he's worked with a whole bunch of people, but mentioned a lot in the book, and it's great to have you guys. And I'm going to just get started here. Rob, you look great, by the way. Let me just start by saying that. It's
I had some work done today, but I just got under the wire. They just finished up. The team just left, and it's all.
You did a good job.
Hair and makeup looks great. So you guys were kind of in that waiting room. I apologize. You weren't able to, I don't think you were able to talk to each other, but Rob, I don't know if you've ever met Gary before, but.
Haven't, Gary.
Yep.
How you doing?
And Joe, yep, you meet Gary, Gary meet
Gary,
Joe.
pleasure.
So I have a couple, I actually made notes and have questions and things that I almost never do. Yeah. Because Robyn, I want to ask you, my dear friend.
Yes.
When did you, how long was this in the process? When did you make the decision to write this book? Like,
You know, I don't really know. I think it sort of, I don't know, it sort of lived inside of me for a long time. I think I think it just evolved normally. I think it just came naturally in my brain one day. I don't think it was one day. I think suddenly I realized everybody missed Jeff all the time. And I think it hit me that I probably had more interviews on the planet with Jeff than anybody, and that something was sorely lacking somewhere, and that somehow I was meant to be the keeper of the flame, and that if anybody was ever going to do it, it had to be me. And I wasn't getting any younger either. And if I was going to get it done, I better do it. I better do it before I left the planet. And I wanted to leave it for my grandchildren, which I don't have, grandchildren's children.
Yes.
Do you hear that, everybody? I don't have grandchildren yet, but I'd like them. Hint, hint. And their children and their children's children, and those kids who look at the shelf one day and say, gee, who's Jeff Porcaro? Maybe I ought to pick that book up and see you know, I want to be a drummer, and I've never heard of him like we do on some of the masters that we may not be in our vocabulary anymore every day.
Right.
So I just want to keep his legend alive. That's all.
That's great. That's
I just wanted to say one thing here, John. Jeff, there are players that in our lifetime that, that we've grown up with, that we've admired and have made massive contributions. After they pass, sometimes I don't know if the right word is their star, but sort of their light shining down, sometimes it starts to fade over time.
yeah.
Jeff, to me, is one of the, certainly in the drum world, one of the guys who almost is star is like rising. And I think this book has done, a lot for his, kind of cemented his place in the star walk of drummers, but
Yeah.
it's really, and I've thought about it a lot. It's really interesting how that happens. There can be, great players. It has, it's almost not even, their technique or what they do or what they've recorded, but it's like there's just some other thing. And you listen to Jeff, and I've been a big fan forever. To me, he's coming at playing music the same place that I wished I could have always come from, that same place.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it was all about his inner soul and his feel. And way before there was a book, there were sites, tribute sites set up to him, because people couldn't believe that he had done such a body of work at such a short age. So, he was so young, and he left so much behind. And they wondered how he did it. Well, how he did it was 3 and 4 sessions a day, because he was so in demand, and because he gave, every piece of him when he was in the studio. He gave every molecule of being. I mean, if you could see him work in the studio, it was his whole body, his whole gut, his every piece of him was in that music, no matter what it was. So that's why people made those sites to him, and have had them for so many years.
Yeah.
Because he was just that soul of that came out in the music. That was just, I mean.
And I have to say, Robyn, you've done a tremendous job capturing that in the book. It comes shining through his soul, and I found myself just like getting emotional reading it at times. And I didn't know him well, but it was so consistent, what Rob was saying too. I mean, it was like everybody said the same thing, that as a human, he was just like the most kind and generous person.
Yeah, it was
professionally.
Crazy. I didn't hear one story. I mean, I heard stories that weren't in the book of guys being at an airport. I mean, fans who, would just call him up and say, I just got into town, and somebody gave me your number, and I just wanted to call you because you're like my favorite drummer. And he'd say, hey man, you at the airport? I'll come get you. What? I mean, it was like, I mean, I've heard those stories from people that are just flabbergasting. I mean, he was just, if he was home and he had a minute and he wasn't at the studio, he would do that. He was a crazy guy. He was so giving and so just magnanimous. And those stories of him in the studio replacing drummers,
Mhm.
and so kind to the drummers that he was replacing.
and not replacing sometimes.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
He's
right.
very generous in that way too. He didn't need to. If he felt like he didn't need it, he wouldn't do it just because they called him.
Right,
It's
right,
like,
right.
no,
He
that's
sussed
great.
out the situation
Yeah,
and told the producer, this guy can do it.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he was a one of a kind.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Robyn first sent me the manuscript, which was, very far along, I read it. I had never, unfortunately, Jeff was, one of a short handful of guys that, I hadn't gotten a chance to hang with or get to know or work with, over all these years. I've been, very blessed to have worked with, a bunch of the guys that I would have loved to have hung with and gotten to know. But Jeff was one that I never did. And when I read her manuscript, I just can picture myself still sitting on the couch, finishing the last page. I kind of just put my the papers down. I said to my wife, it's amazing. I really feel like I know this guy, and
Yeah.
I would really know that I would enjoy hanging with him because he's just a cool guy. And I said, it's really a shame that I never got to hang with him. This is the closest I'm going to get. But there was like something that I felt like he was sort of, I knew him, after
Mhm.
reading the book. And I said, no matter what, I've got to publish this book because it's just too good, and it's going to be, around for a long time. And I think it's, it's great. And I wanted to make sure we did justice to it as best we could in our little corner of the world,
Well,
Well,
you absolutely have, Rob.
I
Yeah.
have to say that Rob and Joe really put their love and heart and soul into this book. And I mean, I wasn't probably easy to work with all the time because I was a shrew and
I doubt it.
and probably the B word sometimes, because this was my baby, and
Yeah.
I mean it was and is really like so everything to me. I mean, I if I could have birthed this thing, it would have come out of me. It was it. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but it was like 8 years, and I wasn't even ready to part with it. I mean, Rob had to say, let it go, the Frozen
Yeah,
song,
yeah.
let it go, let it go, let it go, because I could still be working on it. I mean, it was hard to let go, and I asked a lot of Rob. I had a vision in my mind, and I knew it wasn't going to be an inexpensive vision, and but I was sure of the way I wanted the book to look and represent itself, and it was really important to me that
Absolutely. Yeah.
it be the way I wanted it. And Rob really came through.
Oh, thank you.
And I have to say something else. If it weren't for Rob, I would not have gotten Donald Fagen at the last moment.
Wow.
I owe him that.
Great job, Bravo. That.
I called him up. I said, look, Don, come on, man. You got to throw me a bone here. No, we were at the tail. And really, I would say, I guess, Robyn, correct me if I'm wrong. There were really two artists that Robyn felt were kind of missing, from the picture. Cher, from his when he was, I don't know, 16 or 17 and played with Cher, and that's an unbelievable story in the book about him going on the road and his high school principal giving him permission. I mean, I love that. But Cher, which I had no contact with, and Donald Fagen, who I have a very good friend from Woodstock that was good friends with Donald, and I know either through Keith Carlock. I was kind of figuring what's the road that we're going to go down.
Yeah.
I'm going to push really hard. One, Steely Dan is one of my favorite all-time, catalogs of music that I listen to daily. And, Jeff's contribution to those early records were so substantial. It was for me, it would have been a big hole that I would have lived to regret had I not tried every single thing possible to get to Donald. And so I just sent an email to my friend Happy Traum in Woodstock, who, knew Donald for a long time. And I wrote it in such a way that Happy could just forward it to him in an email if he was comfortable doing that. And within like 2 hours, I get an email. I'm sitting here, I think it was a Sunday night, if I'm not mistaken, and I was getting ready for dinner. I don't remember what we were eating, Johnny. I don't remember if we were having wine that night, but we probably were. But
Good man.
looked down at my laptop, and there, how your email list, the name comes up. It said Donald Fagen. I was like, are you kidding me?
Oh my God.
I yelled out, Donald Fagen. My wife said, what are you talking about? I said, I don't know. He's cursing me out here, and he was so delightful. And, he was like, yeah, I would be happy to be involved. And then there was like 10 emails to set up the time for him to speak to Robyn. And he was like on it, it was like crazy. I'm sitting here like emailing with Donald Fagen. I'm thinking,
Wow.
something's wrong with this picture.
And understand, this is after his management, twice early on in the project told me unequivocally that and at the time, Walter was alive too, that they would not at all participate in the project.
Yeah. It was
Absolutely no. They were done talking about Jeff. They had nothing more to say. Over and done.
There's a lesson, there's a real lesson in that, I think several lessons, first, you don't take no for an answer. And, Robyn tried every avenue she had, but it was incredible. If you get to the right avenue, it was like in minutes. I figured, well, maybe in a week I'll hear back something if I'm lucky, if we ever hear back. And it was like literally within 2 hours of me sending that initial email. It was so cool.
Yeah, and the same thing really happened with Jackson Browne. I tried for 5 years to get to Jackson. And I had, his publicist is my friend and he couldn't even do it. But I asked Bob Glob to, and God bless Bob, I hated asking, and I told him, if you're not comfortable, I respect it. But he went the distance. And Jackson said to me, I am so glad that you pursued this for 5 years, because I would have been heartbroken if I couldn't have contributed.
And it seemed that way. I was going to say Jackson was so giving.
Yeah.
In the book.
He told me he was so glad I kept trying.
He's a really nice guy, Jackson.
Yeah.
Those Jackson Browne lines, though, I think Joe made some of those quotes up, no?
Oh God, don't say that about Jackson. He's a real stickler. Oh my God. Jackson, if you're watching, no, that didn't happen.
Well, listen, I have a couple quick questions, but I'm loving this. This is great. I was hoping it would just sort of get into a free flow of just all this stuff coming out, because I had so many questions I wanted to ask you that I wanted to wait until we did this, just
okay,
because.
Go,
Yeah.
Johnny.
So first of all, two things. Robyn and I talked about this. We definitely have to do a part 2 of this, because there are so many people that we couldn't bring on today that are going to want to do this. So, and I mean that too. In a few weeks, we have to do a follow-up to this and get some more people that I know are going to want to, that were in the book, that are going to want to talk about this. So that's the first thing. But my other question about a part 2 is there going to be a volume 2 to this book? There has to be enough material left over to do another volume of this book. I have to think.
It's real interesting. I've mentioned to Rob that so many people have come to me and said, why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you, would have wanted to tell this story and that story. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, certainly I've already told his early story, his early life, but who knows? Maybe there's more there too. I mean, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
One of the things, John, that we're talking about, and I've been, going, easy, is trying to convince Robyn to do an audio version of the book. There's been a bunch of, I've seen a bunch of, people ask about that online, and Robyn has seen a bunch of that. So, there could be a place to expand and put some additional stories, in the audio version. It might be an interesting
Great idea.
if Robyn doesn't feel she's ready to tackle another 9 years of work.
Oh, please. I don't think it would take another 9 years now that this one's out. But yeah,
Getting any younger, so you better get started.
oh God. Don't say that.
Oh, that's too funny. But no, I was even thinking you could make a book, a smaller sort of supplemental version of just quotes from people, just it could just be just quotes and stories. It wouldn't have to have this sort of form of
about calling it stories.
Yeah.
Because that's what people are coming to me. I mean, so many other producers coming to me and saying, why didn't you come to me? And I said to them, you know what? I actually didn't know you worked with Jeff. Oh, blah, 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 blah. And I'm sorry. I mean, yeah. And people's wives had come to me. Did my husband tell you the time that blah, 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 blah? I said, oh no, that would have been such a great story. It just, it's terrible. And I get so frustrated. Why didn't you tell me that then? So yeah, it's very frustrating. And to be really candid, other people are coming to me and saying, what are you going to work on next? And I gotta say, I can't let go of Jeff. So this is a problem for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's all about Jeff.
Joe, you must have had your hands full editing. I'm assuming you did the bulk of the editing.
Oh yeah.
It was. I just want to say I'm looking at the comments of, if you guys see me looking down. Someone shared the link.
Oh, I'm not seeing any of them. How do I do that?
I just have on my iPad down here with the sound turned off. But,
yeah, if you look at Facebook and mute the sound,
Robyn,
I
don't want to go to that. I don't want to do
I was
that.
going to say that someone shared a link to a very famous Jeff discography that's online. It's run by a lady named Mary. We worked with Mary. The discography that's in the book is that very discography. And actually, in the process of putting that together for the book, we really wanted that complete discography in the book. We actually worked with Mary and we found new additions to the discography. So she improved the site while we were working together. She was super gracious. So it was a she was like, wow, it's so exciting. We have a book about Jeff. So we were all on the same page. So we were happy that we helped that site get better. So if you guys are looking on that site, it's like FrontierNet. It's got a very strange URL, but we worked with them. And so, don't just spend time on the site. Like, you got to read the stories to see what goes with it. But in response to what you said, John, working with Robyn, with Hudson, we've been, of course, Rob for many years has done educational material, and that's been a focus of ours. I have sort of a dream that I think Rob also has of, I think, documenting Jeff more in that way. I'm very interested in. But we've been doing some biography things, and when this project came in, honestly, working with Robyn is such a pleasure. I read her work in Modern Drummer for many years, and it's, the editorial side is rough because it's like you're working with an artist, and I knew Robyn was very close to the material. And Robyn, what you said before, that there's a famous line. I think it's, no work of art is ever completed; it's only abandoned. And I think we have to keep in mind. But I really like the fact that if you haven't checked out the book, it's if you know a lot about Jeff, you will really revel in the detail of learning about the behind the scenes things that happened in the recordings that I loved. Learning about his childhood, telling his story of what made him into the musician that he is. And if you don't know a lot about Jeff, this is an opportunity to really, really understand the impact that this drummer had. His list of who he played with is literally a who's who of 20th century recording artists.
Yeah.
And having said that, I also, I didn't know Jeff at all, and I'm a fan. He's one of my favorite drummers. I watched his Star Licks drum video 1,001 times. I still think it's one of the greatest. And I love the fact all the sessions and everything, but I'm a gigantic Toto fan. So Jeff isn't just this. It's not just the sessions. I know we talked about all the session people, but his life in Toto, which there's a lot of session drummers who don't have the documented, like he's the band guy, he's in Toto,
Yeah.
He's like Neil Peart in Rush or Charlie in the Stones, like, and that I wanted to find out about. I'm like, wait, I get to work on a book where I get to read about my favorite drummer recording, Toto 4. Like, oh, cool, this will be a fun job. And of course, with Robyn as a pro writer, the editing part was really not hard at all. But that behind the scenes of the Toto things, I really, really dug. So if you haven't gotten the book and you're into either the session thing or his life in Toto, I feel it's all really beautifully documented.
It's so well documented. And I that kind of leads, I wanted to just sort of bring Gary into this because Gary worked with Jeff on the road in the late 80s, 87-ish, 88. Gary, is that about right?
Yeah, yes, yeah, right in there.
Yeah. And in the studio too, right? I mean, I think
a little bit.
And there's some great stories in the book that you share. And I didn't know if there was anything, if it's okay with Robyn, that's not in the book, maybe that you could talk about, or so we don't.
Even in the book, I mean,
or
Gary,
even in the book.
the kindness. Somebody actually came to me, Gary, and I mean, because I keep getting instant messages from people telling me their favorite moments of the book or things that they can't believe or they're blown away. And one person said, I can't believe that Jeff let his tech play.
That's what I thought.
I mean, how cool is that?
Well, it was pretty cool. Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, obviously I'm not telling the whole story because you got to read the book.
And I probably wouldn't have told you that story if it turned out to be horrible. But knock on wood, it actually worked, and it was obviously great fun.
But how generous?
Oh yeah,
was that?
Well, I think it's because when the first gig that I did with him, which is in Puerto Rico, I was doing my line check for the sound guys. And they showed up while that was happening, and I was doing the Purdy shuffle, only because it's probably the only thing I know how to play, really. But
well, good for you.
I didn't know they were coming in. They were coming in behind me, the way the building was, and as I was told, because obviously I didn't know it, but they were standing there, and Jeff was digging it. Thank God. But, I think that maybe that's what said, okay, maybe he could play this or that or whatever. Because it was never like, come on, play, come on, play, come on, play. It was just, like I said, it was that morning we had breakfast, and that day we were hanging out. And, he asked me, he said, hey, do you want to hang out tomorrow? I was, what are you going to do? Say no? Of course. Yeah. But that really took me, by surprise. But yeah, so I'm glad it went well. So obviously,
it's just the generosity of a drummer just to say, here, take take the sticks, go do.
Well, that's what David said. David said that's what he would do. Somebody, some great drummer was in town. They always would connect, obviously, and Jeff would invariably, whatever, I don't know how many times, but he would say, hey, come on, why don't you come in and play? But he would never tell the band, and they didn't like it, because they were, what, so yeah, it was, the thing I thought about afterwards but afterwards I thought, man, if I'd have screwed that up or it really sucked or something, could you imagine being in the audience at that concert going, hey, that was a great show, but who the hell is that guy? What's going on?
Yeah, what was that?
That's a bad memory to take home after a Toto
Yeah.
concert.
They'd have a great story to tell people. But, to me, it totally demonstrated what we already knew, which is that he was so secure, and so comfortable that, he was never threatened by anybody. He'd have Steve Gadd or Vinnie Colaiuta come up and play and not be worried that, people are going to dig them more than him,
It was never about that. Never.
And,
Never.
Yeah.
but at the same time, he was so
always
humble.
celebrated everybody. That was him. He would celebrate people
He just really loved it.
and stick up for them. And God, I mean, think about it. He's the one who said, when Vinny came to town, he said, there's this guy and I want him to have work.
Yeah.
I mean, good grief.
Yeah, I
He
know.
was setting Vinny up for, a career.
I texted Vinny yesterday, just a story that I think I might have told him a long time ago. I related this story that the few times that I interacted with Jeff when I was working at Drum Workshop, and we had started distributing Dynacord electronic drums at a point. Excuse me. And Toto had some sort of endorsement as a band with Dynacord. Though Jeff, this was about 1987. Though Jeff was not crazy about electronic drums at that point. He was just tired of them, as you well know. So the folks from Dynacord in Germany, the home office, had contacted me and said, when Toto comes over here next, in the next few months, we want to present Jeff and the band with some award. We want to honor him with some award. And so I called Jeff. I left him a message. He called me back. I think he called me back at my house or something that night. I'm sure, because he was working that day. And he sort of knew who I was from, talking on the phone. So I'm telling him the story, how Dynacord wants to do this. And he said, oh, no way, man. No, tell him to give it to Vinny. not me, man. It was it was the classic Jeff response. No way. No, I don't want that. No, I'm not. They need to give that to Vinny. And he meant it. I mean, he was humble. He was being very honest and sincere and give it to this guy who's, who he felt was at this, he was just so like that, and in so many ways. There are a couple of people that wanted to just kind of come in and say a few words. I think if you guys don't mind, I'll let them into the
more the merrier.
Great. I hope the folks watching at home don't mind. Yeah, there's let's see if that worked. Let's see.
Who's here?
Oh, what do you know?
Hey.
Hey.
I don't see him. Who?
Welcome, Steve Gadd and Rick Marotta.
No way. I don't see
My
them.
neighborhood, la 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 la.
Where are they?
You might have to.
Oh my God, Rick!
There we go. I was going to say you might have to adjust your view if you don't see them in the screen.
I see Rick. I don't see Steve.
Oh, Steve's there, all right. He's there. Don't let him.
I don't see Steve either.
Yeah, I don't either. I
I
did
see
for a
him.
minute, but I don't now.
Where's
Steve.
Steve?
He's looking very good.
Yeah, he's there.
Gary
Robyn, I
Grimm.
see him.
Hey, Rick.
I saw Gary Gism from the Stevie Nicks Orchestra.
Hey, Rick. Want some water?
A lot of inside jokes there. Hey, thanks for joining, guys. Sorry you were in the waiting room there for a few minutes.
Where is Steve?
I
I don't see Steve.
I don't either.
Go-
But
If you go up to your view, Go up to-
gallery view.
go up to gallery view at the top of your screen.
oh,
And
Oh, there he is.
okay, yeah.
Steve.
How you doing?
Good. How are you? Thank you for coming.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me. It's nice
And
to be here.
Rick, I love you.
Good to see you, Robyn.
Good to see you.
All the ladies love Rick. Let's just get that out
Well,
there right now.
yeah,
I don't know
okay.
what all the fuss is about Steve. Where's Steve? I just don't get the fuss. Steve, what's going on with what happened to you?
It was just a graze. I just got grazed by a stray bullet.
Well,
It's just
As
a
I was
flesh
editing,
wound.
I thought, oh, this is not going to be good. No, I should just let it go.
it's only a
Just act like you don't care about it. Don't act like you don't care because it's not going to turn into anything good.
it's only a flesh wound, Steve. It's only a flesh wound.
It's only a flesh wound, yeah.
So we've been telling some great stories. We've been talking about Jeff, and I didn't know if you guys might want to share a story or two, a memory.
Well, I remember that, you know, when I came to New York, Rick was already plugged into the studio thing. And after I got into the scene in New York, then I started getting invited out to do some things in LA, and Jeff was already plugged in out there. I mean, he was not only doing a lot of dates, but I mean, he was I heard about this band Toto, you know, all the guys that were in Toto I would bump into them on dates, and they would tell me about Jeff and stuff. But he was on, you know, doing a whole other thing when he wasn't doing Toto. And then, you know, I bumped into him, you know, I don't remember exactly where it was, but we ended up over at his house and had an evening, you know, just hanging. And that's the longest I ever spent with him. The other times were like at the NAMM show, we'd bump into each other. But I was a fan. I loved the way he played, and I remember listening to, there was a Valerie Carter album, Just a Stone's Throw, that Jeff played on. I used to listen to that. You know, I mean, so yeah, he was a great musician and comes from a family of. Oh, the other thing is, through Mike Maneri, I had heard about Joe Porcaro, because Mike and Joe were friends from years back. So, you know, I had a little bit of history about the Porcaro family.
Yeah.
Great to know all of them.
Yeah.
It's a big loss. Jeff was a big loss.
Yeah.
Yep.
Boy, was it ever. Well, Steve, I was going to say there's a story in the book about a session that you and he and I think Russ Kunkel did for the Bee Gees. And I mentioned it to you the other day, and I guess you didn't remember it, but Jeff recalls, I think Jeff tells the story right in the book where he talks about, you know, recalling some of the wackiest adventures he'd been on. He said, you know, we got called to do this thing, and it was me, Gadd, and Kunkel, and you know, it was during that time too, when people were having you guys overdub, you know, toothpicks falling on a table, you know, and
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, like the
Yeah,
craziest shit.
down in Florida with the mechanical arm.
That's what it was.
Measuring
Yes.
the deep.
Yeah, well, but they might have had him overdub stuff that we had already done. We didn't do it together, but I'm sure there were overdubs on those tracks. You know, they were bringing people in all the time to. Is that what he was talking about?
No, he was talking about trying to create like a machine-like robotic. They were trying to duplicate the machine in the back room, while this robot arm was playing milliseconds on a saw. I'm making a mess of the story, but on a saw. What do they call it? A work saw.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
And the arm would come down, and they had to drop the arm in milliseconds, and they would say, no, it's a millisecond too short. You would remember.
Yeah, I
Steve.
would.
It
You know
was a-
what? Well, but let me tell you something. I should remember that, but back in those years,
Oh.
There's a good chance that I don't remember. I'm not
Okay,
sure.
okay. I get it.
I didn't want to
get
say
it.
anything again. I'm sitting here going, just
I get it. I get it. I get it. Well,
Hey, guys,
Jeff
there's-
bitched about it ad nauseum.
There's somebody knocking at the door that wants to come in. I'm going to let him in real quick. Hopefully you're going to see him on the galley in a second.
Ah.
Oh,
Vinny.
look at that hairdo.
Oh my God!
Hey, Vinny.
Vinny!
Vincenzo.
Hey,
I don't see it.
man, it's him.
You're joining the party.
I didn't recognize him, man. I didn't recognize you.
I know, I didn't either.
We
That
can't
looks
hear
good.
you. Are you talking? I can't hear
Oh,
you.
Vin, we're not hearing your mic.
Vinny, you're muted.
Oh,
Turn yourself on.
oh, no, not.
Can't
Wait a
hear
minute.
you.
Wait, I hear some clicking. There.
Oh,
Oh,
wait a minute, connecting to audio. Hold on.
Working?
There he is. There he is.
Hey, hey, hey.
Vinny!
See some big mill up in the top there? Do I see? What's up? Hey,
how you doing, Vinny?
hey, Steve. So good
Yeah.
to see you.
Good to see you too, man. Good to see
Yeah.
What a party.
I'm,
Boy.
I'm miserable and cranky and old. How you guys doing?
Well, ditto.
Yeah,
you.
add
We're
me to
talking
that
about
list.
Jeff. We're remembering
That's a great
stories about
subject.
Jeff, man.
Man, all right. That's a great thing. I couldn't think of a better thing to talk about.
Uh,
Me too.
Yeah.
Me
Oh,
too.
I was-
Really. And,
Rick,
and
you were-
Robyn,
Rick,
Thank you
you
for doing
wait,
that.
Rick, you must have a good story. And
Well-
even do you remember? I mean, you were at the very first drum roundtable,
Yeah.
and was
think
that?
Vinny-
I mean,
I think
had you
Vinny
known
was-
Jeff before that?
Was it Vinny there too?
Vinny was there
was at-
too
I was there. Let's see.
with Jeff
Hold
and
on, yeah.
Rick
Yeah.
Jeff,
Keltner.
Yes.
and Keltner.
Elner, and
Now, Blaine?
Craig
No.
Cramp. No, the Hal Blaine one, Rick
Cramp.
wasn't at, and Jeff wasn't
Oh.
at.
Right. That was a different one. Okay.
That was the first
Okay.
one. And then the second part, Rick
Uh-huh.
was at and Jeff was at.
All right. Right.
And
right.
Craig Cramp,
Yeah, I
right?
remember that. Yep. I remember that.
Did you know Jeff very well at that point, Rick?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Hi, Vinny.
Hey, Rick.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good, bud. Good to see you.
You too. Yeah, I knew Jeff. Well, my first when I first met Jeff, when I first came to LA was very long time ago. I went to LA to do a record as a drummer for I think it was Tropez. No, I was with Spinoza, and we were at A&M, and there was another drummer in the room, and then Dave came in to me. This is a long time ago, and Dave said, "Holy shit," he goes, "that was really weird." This other drummer, who I won't name, came out and said, "Hey man, what's going on? What are you doing in there?" He goes, "Oh yeah, we're doing this record." I think it was with Jim Carroll, or it was with I can't. But so anyhow, this other drummer said, "Hey, who's that guy in there?" He goes, "Oh, that's my buddy Rick Marotta. We grew up together. He's a drummer from New York, blah, blah, blah." And this other drummer said, "You know, you don't have to bring guys in from out of town. We got plenty of good drummers here." Okay. So that was a story. It kind of freaked Dave out a little bit, kind of freaked me out a little bit. And we went home. So I come back to LA years later to do some sessions. And I thought, I had always remembered that. I come in and I'm starting to move. I'm going to like spend more time there. I was staying at Annie Strier's house. She rented me a room and I was just getting settled in. And I meet Jeff at the studio and I thought, oh yeah, Jeff Porcaro, he's great. It's going to be one of those things. Jeff comes up to me and he says, "Oh man, Rick, he just said, I love your playing, this, that, and the other thing. And listen, if there's anything I can do to help you get settled in, or like if you need work or anything, I got so much work, I'm happy to send work your way." And at that time, we were all working a lot. And he looked at me and I didn't say anything to him. I was kind of taken aback. And I looked at him and he went, wait, Rick Marotta, you don't need work. And he reached in his pocket. He reached in his pocket and he grabbed a handful of change and he shoved it in his mouth, started chewing it and walked away like he had said something silly. And I grabbed him and I said, hey man, that was the most unexpected and the nicest thing. Steve Gadd would never do anything like that. And we became fast friends. And the other thing I wanted to say, Steve already mentioned that the Porcaro family, and Vinnie knows this too. Well, we all know this, but I can't tell you how they would call me, Joe Porcaro. I had met Steve Porcaro because Steve was playing when I was on the road with Peter Frampton in the early 70s doing the Frampton Comes Alive tour. Steve was just a kid. He was like 17 years old. He was playing in Gary Wright's band, and Gary was opening for Peter on the Frampton Comes Alive tour. And that's where I met Steve. He was this little skinny kid walking around. He had a strap-on keyboard. So I had met Steve then. And so when I got to LA, Mike Porcaro, Steve Porcaro, Joe Porcaro, and Jeff Porcaro would call me every once in a while. And they all, Joe was great. He was like, Rick, you have a place. Anytime you need to come by, Aileen and I, you're always welcome at the house. You're always welcome here. Come and have pasta with us. We'll have some macaroni with this, that, and the other thing. And the other guys would call, and I could never tell which one was which because the call would be, hey,
Yo.
Morata, what's up with you? Just calling to make sure everything's okay. You good? And I still get those calls from Steve, but he's the only one left now, so I know it's him. But it would be Jeff or Mike but when Joe called, he would just go, hey, I'd run into him, and he was the most soft-spoken, sweetest guy, and he was always, usually he was around Emil Richards. They were always together. For some reason, I would always see the two of them. And I just remember the whole family as being great.
They are. They are. They totally are.
You know, one other quick one, Jeff was doing Fagen's solo record at Jeff's house when he lived on Hudson. He had this great studio in the back. And one day I get a call and it's Jeff, and he goes, hey man, what are you doing? I said, hey, what's up? He says, listen, I'm working on Fagen's record. And I don't know, I just don't feel, it just feels like you should be doing this. Could you come in and do it? Would you come in and work on it? And I go, I guess, what does Donald say? And then Donald's there, Donald gets on the phone, he goes, yeah, hey man, you know, we all know Fagen. And he's like, hey, yeah, we're over here working on it. And Jeff is thinking, so I go, okay, where's the date? He goes, Jeff goes, it's at my house. So I would be going to Jeff. I would go to Jeff's house to do his gig. It was the weirdest thing because you're in his studio at his house and he's just walking around having a cup of coffee. Go, hey, what's going on? And I just thought it was the weirdest thing because, you know, this is a guy, nobody does that kind of stuff.
There are stories about that in the book, several. About Jeff calling other drummers to his dates.
He was the least insecure guy I knew.
Yeah, we were just talking about that. Vinnie, I think there's a story about you in that situation, right? In the book? Where he
Me?
Yeah, well, yeah, because he sub a gig.
Yeah, I mean, that I could back that up. I mean, that was just like Rick said, you know, I mean, he's like, there are very, very few people with that kind of heart and that kind of humility and that kind of, he was confident, but in a way where, you know, he really didn't care and he just wanted to help people. He was so non-competitive and he just wanted to help other people. He just loved people and he had a huge, huge heart. And really, I mean, like I said, you know, I mean, I can count people like that I've met on one hand, subtracting a few fingers, you know. Steve Gadd would be another one. Steve Gadd would be in that company. And really, I mean, it's like when we talk about heart, and honestly, Steve, I have to tell you this. You know, you need to know this, man, because you know, you're of that ilk, and for that, you know, amongst hundreds of other things that I could say right now, I have the utmost respect, you know. So, but again, back to Jeff, you know, he would do things like that. Like one time, I remember I was playing at the Baked Potato, and you know, he showed up, and there was like the stage is this weird little kind of there's this kind of a wall that goes halfway. Like if you're the drummer and you're in the corner, there's this sort of thing that goes up to you maybe waist high, and people are sitting there and they're sort of looking at you, and you know, it's like a partition or something, like I don't know. And he was sitting there, and so I was playing, and you know, and I'm playing, and for quite a while I had my eyes closed, so you know, I couldn't see what was going on, and I think sweat was getting in my eyes, and all of a sudden I felt something was wrong with the left foot, because it was pressing the hi-hat pedal and nothing was happening. So I kind of opened my eyes and I looked to see what was going on, and I looked down because I was pressing the hi-hat and nothing was happening, and I just happened to look down, and Jeff must have somehow crawled, and I'm not sure where he did it. But yeah, he must have either crawled over the pass-through or went around the front of the stage, and I looked down, and he was on the floor, on his back, looking up at me, fixing my hi-hat pedal. and seriously, and I looked down, and he was on his back, looking up at me, and when I looked at him, he just busted out laughing, and I started laughing, and you know, I think maybe I stopped playing for bars or something, and we were both just cracking up, and I'm like, "What are you doing in the middle of a tune?" And so that's what he was like. That was just one thing, and he would do the same thing, like Rick said, where you know, he'd call me up and say, "I got a gig at the Potato, like now, can you make it?" Or he would say, "Gary, how are you? I haven't seen you in a million years. I see you." And it's Gary Grimm, and it's really good to see you. So many people here now, and he would do things like that, or he would say, "You know, I've got a session. You know, I can't do it. I've already told him about you, recommending you." And, you know, I would turn up at the session. It would be like Stan Getz or some major thing like that, you know, and he just didn't care. He would put his reputation on the line, or, you know, he would lend me his drums to use for sessions. And it just, I mean, it goes on. And there's not one story like that. He was just like that. He did things like that all the time. It was like a normal thing for him. You know, he just, yeah, you know, and when we'd hang out and, you know, just, you know, go over to his house, listen to music, and just, you know, hang, talk, go to dinner. And I mean, just he was just a good guy, you know. It was a mensch. He was, you know what I mean? He was just great. He was just a real big-hearted guy who would do anything for anybody. He didn't care. It wasn't like Rick said, you know, competition or just being worried about he didn't worry about anything. You know, he knew that, and you know, and like Rick said, at that time too, I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. Everybody was working. I mean, we had, back in those days, like the E team was turning down work. You know what I mean? It was like that. And you know, guys that you never even heard of were just, I mean, guys who would just play clubs were buying houses. You know. They were just playing, you know, clubs and buying houses. So there was a lot of work. But And he just knew that he understood really a lot of things that most people overlook. They think, oh well, if this person is at this level, he's going to take something away from me. It's like Jeff understood that was just a bunch of bullshit, pardon my language. He understood because there's so many more factors. Because over the years, I've seen people working, they had nothing to do with just the level of it had a lot to do with a bunch of other things. Like there has to be camaraderie. It's psychological. What's the chemistry like? What is your identity like? What is your identity going to bring to something? And there's all of that. And there's no one size fits all. At least there wasn't then, because I think identity was more championed. And so he was comfortable. He knew what he could do, which was anything. And there was no reason for any of that kind of foolishness. And so, his heart, and they were all Joe. I mean, may he rest in peace, because we lost Joe not long ago. And that's this whole legacy is just, it's like that's like the end of an era to me, the whole thing is like the end of an era now. And it's kind of sad, because Jeff, to me, doesn't just represent an epoch, but he's timeless. You know what I mean? He's just this iconic figure. I mean, if there was a Mount Rushmore for drummers, he'd be the spearhead. He would be at the forefront. So I can't say enough about him in that regard, or in any other regard. And so that's about all I really have to add here.
No, that's beautiful, Vinny.
Sad to say, but
before you got on the call here, we were talking about how his, Jeff's influence, respect, whatever is the right word, it's like growing over time, and that doesn't happen often, with any artists of any ilk, whether it's, the real greats and the real people that have something to contribute to me, that can happen once in a while. But Jeff seems to have, just the outpouring from this book, and the amount, I'm sure, Robyn, you're getting bombarded. I mean, I've gotten a lot of messages and texts, and people are finding me on Facebook, and, just kind of saying how appreciative they are of the work, and how much it's meant to them, and, how Jeff changed their life, and, incredible.
Yeah, it's been truly, people are so thrilled, because it's a piece of, it reminds them, it's bringing him back to, somebody said to me, I think it was just this morning, thank you for bringing him back to life. And that brought tears to my eyes, because if I could do anything, and if anything were what I wanted to do, it was that. I mean, that was actually what I wanted to do for people, was to give them back a piece of Jeff, and let them feel him again. And because I know everybody's missed him so much, and felt his, they hear him in the music, but they've missed his presence. And so if I could do anything, it was that. I mean, someone said to me, he wouldn't want this book. He wouldn't want anybody to make a big fuss out of him, and he wouldn't want it. And I said back to them, look, if he were still alive, I wouldn't have done this. I mean, he probably wouldn't have wanted a fuss. But the fact of the matter is, people miss him so much that there's such a hole, and I wanted to give them something and fill that hole for them, and bring them some joy in their lives. And particularly, I thought, God, during a pandemic, my luck, I would put out a book during a frickin' pandemic. And then I realized, it was in Yiddish, there's a thing called a mitzvah. It's a good thing to do for people who are hurting at a time like this, because it gives them some pleasure and some joy and something to feel something good about. And so if I did something good in this time of sorrow, then I'm glad. I'm glad I could give people something. And, and it was also cathartic for people who I interviewed, the people, the producers. I mean, Gary Katz said to me, I'm so grateful to be able to talk about Jeff. And it made him feel good to be able to, not have closure, but to be able to vent and share. And so I'm glad it filled a gap, it filled a hole, and Jeff isn't here to get mad at me, and I'm hoping.
Can I say something real quick?
Of course,
Rick.
Let me tell you something. So if anything ever happens and you end up doing a book about Steve and someone comes up to you and says he would not like that, that's a lie. Tell them to call me. You could get a quote from me that it would be like, he's literally in his grave saying, I hope Robyn's doing a book about it.
I was wondering how far this is going to go before that was going to happen.
You are a mean.
And there's your answer, Vinny.
You are so mean.
Vinny, did Neil ever tell you that story? I was talking to Neil just last week, and he was telling me the story about Jeff, the phone call. Do you remember that story?
Oh, you mean what? He just got off the phone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah. That's a great story.
You got to tell it now. One of you guys has to tell it.
Go ahead, Rick.
No, Vinny, you do it. You'll probably remember.
I don't know if I can remember the exact story, but it was just basically, I think the gist of the story was that he was on a session and he got pissed off and he left, right? No, what he did was,
it's in the book.
Said, I think Foster was on the session too. He was,
yeah,
or he was on the session. And he said, "Yeah, I gotta go make a phone call. I'll be right back." And that was the end. He just ghosted, right? And
he left.
It's in the book. It's
I
in the
saw
book.
I saw his car driving away.
Yeah, and then like the next day or something, one of them saw him and said, "Man, what happened?" And he goes, I just got off the phone.
That story is in the book.
That's in the book.
And I think it was a Barbara Streisand session.
It's one of my favorite stories about.
I just got off the phone.
That's a good one. Oh, God.
Oh, there's so many great things like that in the book. I mean, it's you 1 minute you're laughing hysterically at stuff, and then you get emotional, but it makes you feel so good to read it because there's so much great stuff. And I was just going to add to what you guys had said, which is to think that it's been almost 30 years that he's been gone. God rest his soul, and the body of work that he created, that stopped almost 30 years ago. When you think about what he would have done, in the ensuing years.
I still remember how I found out. Gary Grimm, who's on this call, called me. Gary called me and he broke the news to me, and Gary couldn't even talk. I still can remember that. I was like, no, you're what?
And Vinny, you were the one who called me.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to say, and I remember it was like, it was weird because I talked to him, I think 2 days before. I think it was on a Wednesday. I think he passed on a Friday. I can't remember. Anyway, it was 2 days before, and I said, hey, you guys are going to be in England in a couple of weeks or something, or next month, or and I said, so I am too. I'll be over there too. So we'll be there at the same time. We'll get together when we're over there. He goes, yeah, that'd be great. You know, we made plans to, you know, hang out when we were going to be in London at the same time. And 2 days later, yeah, I was home. I remember, and Lenny Castro called me and told me, and he told me, and I couldn't believe it. I thought I was stunned. I couldn't talk, and I just sat outside on a chair for about an hour and a half, numb, like literally numb. I couldn't. Yeah. It was the day of infamy. I mean, we'll never forget it. I mean,
Yeah.
like, you know, one of those things that's impacts you so hard. You remember everything. Like, you know, you remember where you were on 9/11. You remember those kinds of things, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was that intense.
Vinny, did you play at the funeral?
I didn't because I couldn't because I was out of town or working or on the road or something, and they called me to you know, and I couldn't. That's one of my big regrets, you know, that I
You
couldn't
know,
be there.
this last summer, I was in Ireland, and I was playing golf at the Old Head in Kinsale,
Yeah.
and I was sitting in the cafe there having lunch, and I look over, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I recognized her. It was Susan Goings, who was Jeff's wife. And I was so taken aback. I walked out and I said to one of the guys that worked there, I said, "Is that Susan Goings in there?" "Oh yeah, you know Susan." So I walked in, I saw her. I said, "You know, it's Rick Marotta." I had not seen her since the funeral. Okay.
Wow.
Now Susan was Jeff's wife. That was Susan Porcaro at the time, and they had 2 sons. And I said,
3.
Three sons. Yeah.
3 sons, sorry. And I said, so we started talking, and we were both losing it. I mean, and she pulls out, she goes, "Rick, it's so weird to run into you." She takes her phone out, "I have to show you something." And it was the news story that she didn't let them run of the funeral. And she said, "I just got this out of the archives. I just got it." For some reason, she showed it to me on her phone, and we were both in tears. Literally, it was she said she was a newscaster in LA at the time, and she was an anchor. She was a big newscaster, and she didn't want it. She didn't want them showing the funeral or something for some reason, but she got the footage from the archives and she showed it to me. And there it was, I think it was me, Jim Keltner, JR, might have been Kurt Pescara, I can't remember.
Probably.
Was Robyn?
Probably.
And
Kurt.
we had a line. They asked us to play
Right.
from the great hall where the funeral was to his gravesite. And so we played this march, and it was pretty amazing. And to see it again really, really rocked us both. For us to see it, but it was just sort of one of those things that happened, and I remember saying to her, I hadn't had a chance to tell her how sorry I was, and it was great to see her.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I did, you were talking about when he passed, and I was in New York with doing that rock and soul review with Fagan and Michael McDonald and Boz. And you know, I came into rehearsal with that news because I was told, I got called by Dirk Schubert about 1 a.m. or something. It was just like, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to say, or they probably already know, but you know, it was just really, really tragic. And they all left to go to the funeral and stuff, but wouldn't allow me to go. But, you know, I think that's probably when I called Rick. I'm not sure, but, you know, yeah, that was rough, really.
You know, not to dwell on the dark side, but when Robyn when we were getting towards the end of the book, we talked about, you know, we would talk about who should write the introduction. And obviously you guys came up and she said, well, I was thinking about Jim Keltner. And I said, I couldn't think of a better choice. And that was even before, I knew they were very close, but it was, so I called Jim. She said, why don't you call him and let him know what we need and what we're looking for, so he hears it from you. So I called him, and, it was incredible. He said, I'd be honored. It would be a complete honor for me to do that. He said, as a matter of fact, I think a couple days ago, I was up at Jeff's grave. He said, I go up and still I visit his grave, every, couple of months, all these years later. I mean, so the depth of their relationship completely blew me away. And I was just so thrilled and honored that he would write the book, the intro to the book because of that, really.
Wow.
He's the one that called me. Jim's the one that called me and let me know.
And I'm the one who called him.
Yeah. And I was unable to come out to do the parade, but I wish I could have. But I just remember getting the call.
If you came out, Steve, they probably wouldn't have let me.
What if it's Rick and Steve's show? I need it.
Oh, Vinny, you
Thank
don't
you
know
for
the half
the
of it.
levity. Thank you for the levity, Rick.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm just waiting for that because
Yeah.
I didn't
Oh,
get
it's
a
great.
chance to say hello to Gary and Joe and Rob. Man, how you guys doing?
Steve.
Great, Steve. Thank you.
Rob, could you move one or two of the pillows on the bed behind you? The one with the flowers. The one with the flowers, you might want to just get that off the bed because it looks a little dangerous for you.
I have to agree. And I'd like to redecorate some of those pictures over there.
To the left, yeah.
All of that's got to go. All of that.
Oh, man.
Christopher,
I
you're
wanted to
giving
say,
up drum envy over there. You with the two drum, it's the Gretsch showroom. Look at that. Look at him
I
with
got
it's
I got
amazing.
more in the other room, Vinny, too. I got one set up right-handed for when you guys come out,
Come on,
and a black drum set for me.
unbelievable. Beautiful. They're vintage, of course, right? They're probably like,
They are.
early 60s round badge, right?
The Black Diamond Pearl is a 62, and the black set is a 72 stop sign badge.
Oh,
It's beautiful.
only the good stuff.
Good stuff.
It's the
No,
good
if I could just learn to play them, that's
Ah,
a minor detail.
Johnny, I was talking to Kelly about the drums. She's just about at the edge of,
Oh, I know.
Of her wits end. She's at her wits end with John. I
Rick
know.
knows all about. Yeah, you know
Kelly,
that. Yeah.
she's at her wits end with you. And wait a second. Did you ever show her the lesson I wanted you to show her?
Yes, I did. Yes,
Did
I
she
did.
like it?
She loved it.
Oh,
I'm
good.
gonna send it to Vinny when we're done. I'm gonna
You
send him.
gotta send it to Olga too. Send it to Olga.
Yeah. I'm gonna show it to Olga on Thanksgiving.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Show it. Send it to Vin. Send it to everybody here.
I will. I'll
On
send it
me.
It's clean, Vinny. I promise it's
Funny.
clean.
Okay.
It's really funny. You're gonna love it. Oh man. Well, this is so great. Sorry.
Well,
I got to tell you, it's really great seeing everybody, man. Oh man, and Gary, I haven't seen you in so long, man. It's just really good to see you. I don't know where you are
I'm
nowadays.
in Phoenix.
You're
Okay,
in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm in Phoenix.
I thought you moved out of Phoenix.
man, you got.
we were gonna, and then it didn't work out. But
Gary, you should have never let him know that you were there.
No.
Well, he asked me a long time ago if I wanted to do some stuff, and of course, no, why would I?
Yeah. It's great seeing you guys, Rick, man, Steve, everybody.
You too, Vinny.
Good to
Great
see
to see
you
you.
all.
You too.
You know, yeah, you guys, really great seeing you, man.
Thank you, Vinny.
We-
Thanks
Thank
for,
you for coming to my party, Vinny.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
throw great parties, John.
Absolutely.
Well-
I'm honored to be able to do that. And thank you for writing that book.
Thank you
Yeah.
for being
Yeah.
a part of it, Vin.
Yeah.
amen.
Having us.
Yeah.
I love you guys, and I'm just really, really blessed that we could even talk to each other this way, virtually. It's great. We can all get through this tough time now, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Nice to
Well,
see you
let's
too.
pray for the world, okay?
yeah, we need a lot of prayers right now. So, yeah,
Yeah.
working on that.
See you, Vin.
Thank you, Vinny. Thanks for being here. Love you, buddy.
God bless you guys.
All right.
Hey, Vin.
Talk to you
Vinny.
soon, Vin. Ciao, ciao.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Guys, I wanted to say one thing I've been thinking about hearing all your stories since I didn't know Jeff and I heard on the news when he passed away. And, it's somehow like our people when they, there was a book about John F. Kennedy. It's called An Unfinished Life. And I thought of Jeff when I
Hmm.
heard that title. And it's like our heroes, they remain like frozen in time. And
True.
so like Jeff's always remained that way for me. Like I think of him at that age. And then I realized he was 38, right? Like he did all that and he was 38. It's like uncanny.
Right.
Yeah,
And now as we're all much older than that, you look back and you're like, wow, this is tight and frozen in time. And he was only 38 and he accomplished all that. It's amazing.
it is amazing.
It is. I know. I think about that too, Joe. I think I remember he's 6 years older than me. And I remember when I turned 38, like that number thinking like, wow, this is how old Jeff was when he died, and it at the time, it seems, when you're that age, you think you're older than you are. Of course, now I'm going to be 60 in a few weeks. So I look back at that and think like, he's a few years older than my son is now. You know what I mean? When you put all those things in perspective and you go, my God, he was so young. And I'll just say, I actually got to know Joe really well after Jeff passed through kind of a weird set of circumstances. And that you might remember he had a drumstick company for a while, Joe Porcaro,
Right.
diamond tip drumsticks. And he approached me when I was at Zildjian, and I was the drumstick guy there to make his sticks for him. And we did. And so we were like his OEM stick maker for a few years. And we'd hang out at NAMM shows together and go to dinner. And him and Aileen came to Boston one summer. They did a Cape Cod, Maine sort of vacation. We had dinner at an Italian restaurant, and I brought my kids, and they were there. I mean, God rest Joe's soul, but they were just the most beautiful family. And I remember, I tried to play it cool and not talk about Jeff the whole time, but Joe said to me on a couple of occasions, I told him I'd met him a couple of times, and he said, he would have really liked you. He would have, you guys would have been, in that voice, that sort of like Connecticut, he would have,
Yeah.
hey, Jawan, yeah, Jeff, you're Jeff's kind of guy. Jeff would have liked you, and they're just such, as you guys have already said, Ricky was saying, and everybody was saying.
They were
yeah.
so, I've said this many times, but I want to say it again. They were very generous to me. They were so kind and so giving and so magnanimous. And right away, from the minute I asked them if it would be okay, they absolutely said, yes, you may have our son at your disposal. Please write a book. They never once said, we want to read it. We want approval. We want this, we want that. It was, of course. And it was amazing. They just were so wonderful. And Jolene sat with me and went through all the pictures, and here's a great one, and what about this, and look at this, and wasn't he cute? And she became like a sister. We gushed over her brother, and look at this adorable one, and they were so good to me. And Joe was so excited about this book. That was the biggest sadness for me, was that he never got to read it. It was about 2 weeks too late.
Yes, it was so sad. We really were pushing at the end, and Robyn called me one day and said, Joe's really going downhill. How close are we here? And she was going over to the house to read him, sections of it, right, Robyn?
Well, I sent it to Aileen to read him
That's right.
the book, and
That's beautiful.
and he was, I sent him an unfinished copy, basically, like a computer transcript.
Mhm.
And he had started declining so rapidly that he wasn't even able to listen. That was the biggest sadness for me during this whole process.
I'm starting to get sad all over again. Let's go back to happy things.
I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I was going to say that too, that
I'm gonna have to, I got something I gotta do, but
Okay.
I thank you for inviting me today.
Thank
and
you for
thanks
coming,
writing the book.
Steve. It's nice to see your face.
Good to see everybody. Good to see you, and good to see
See
all
you,
you
Steve.
guys.
Take care,
All right.
bud.
Talk
Thanks,
to you.
Steve.
Talk to
Steve.
you soon.
Here's Steve.
all right. Talk to
See
you
you,
later,
Steve.
Steve. Thank you.
See you.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
I was just going to say, Robyn, two quick things that, they trusted you, obviously. They love you, they know you, and, your relationship with Jeff it's so well documented, all these years. I mean, he opened up to you, and they knew that. They knew how much he loved and respected you, and they in turn did. And I was just going to say, I made a note to make sure I said this, but it was, even though Joe wasn't with us to actually see the finished book, I'm so glad that you did it when you did it, so that you were able to get him in it. You
Oh,
didn't
God,
decide to do
thank
it
God.
now,
Oh,
obviously.
my God. Thank
Because
God.
there's so many great things in there, stories from Joe and quotes, and
Thank
so great
God.
to see his fingerprint in there.
Thank God,
Yeah.
because
The
he
fun-
was a big part of it.
One of the fun things that I heard about, so a couple of different people, messaged or whatever, they said as they were reading the book, they would listen to music that corresponded to, what was happening in that chapter. And they said it really made it even more powerful,
Yeah.
which was a cool, kind of a cool thing.
Yeah, there were some actual tracks in there that were a little bit off the beaten track. Oh, off the beaten track, no pun intended. And I actually listened to them after the producers would talk about them, like the Colin Blunstone track that I had never heard before. And they were so awesome that I was so glad that I had spoken to these particular people, because I would never have heard Jeff on those tracks. They were completely not on my radar. So
Yeah.
I think that the people had picked up on those too, that they were not, they weren't hits. They weren't anything that maybe were on people's radar. So that was kind of cool.
That is cool. That's very cool.
Reading the discography, in the
Excuse
book,
me.
I mean, that's one of the shockers. There was a lot that I learned, an awful lot, because I didn't know Jeff. But reading that discography and what you were saying before, Johnny, it made me think of it, at 38 years old. And I thought I had, a little bit of a grasp about his body of work. And, I knew one little corner of what he did, really. It was mind-boggling to flip.
Thank you, Joe, for your tireless work on that discography.
My pleasure. Actually, I was going to say, Robyn, reading the work and seeing your passion from it from the beginning that we started editing it, the Porcaro family knew the reason they let you have free reign is they knew they had the best, most respectful, loving person who could write about Jeff. It's the tone of the book is just like that. For anyone who hasn't read it, it really is a loving tribute to him, while also documenting his professional life, which is really the focus of it.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you.
Yeah. Get this for the holidays, everybody. If you haven't bought this book, I'm telling you.
Plug, plug, plug.
Yeah. And I will say, I told you this, Robin, I had to force myself to stop reading it at times because I didn't want to finish it like in a day or 2 days. I really wanted to.
Do you
I
know
go,
a
okay.
lot of people
Isn't that crazy?
said that online? They said they were really sad because they were coming to the end, and
Yeah.
that made me feel so happy. I mean, not for me, just for Jeff. Just
Yeah.
makes me happy for Jeff.
It
Makes me
reads so
happy.
quickly. It really does. It really is a page turner. I mean, the old expression. And there, Rick, I told you there's a mention of you a couple of times in here, but Jeff mentions talking about Fillmore West. He's talking about King Curtis live at the Fillmore West albums, both of which Bernard Purdie played on. King Curtis is live at the Fillmore when they do Memphis Soul Stew. You get a taste of this Bernard Purdie lope that I've heard a lot from Rick Marotta. And I have to tell you, the first time I read that, I laughed because it's an inside joke between me and Rick. I was playing a gig on the Vineyard a couple of summers ago, and he came to see me play, and he was telling me that you need to lope. You don't lope when you play. You got to lope.
Lope.
Yeah. And he lopes.
I'm gonna lope
loped.
out of here. I'm getting these weird calls saying, "What the hell am I doing?" I'm very happy to see everybody. Robyn, congratulations! You're the best at this kind of stuff, and
Thank
all the
you.
best with this book, and everybody involved. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to talking to you and seeing you soon. And
I adore you, Rick.
one thing before I go, I just want to say about Robyn is that if it weren't for her, I probably would never have done another interview for the rest of my life, because people were calling me to do interviews, and I had a really bad experience. Some interviews I had done for magazines when I was first coming up, and I really didn't like it. So I decided for years I would not do an interview. And Robyn called me to do one for Modern Drummer, and I gave her the hardest time you possibly could imagine. She was unrelenting, and she did it. And I was, to this day, glad she did, because it opened the door to me and it let me realize that some people that write these stories actually want to get to know what you want to say and not what they want to say. So good job, Robyn, and thanks.
Amen. Yep.
Keep it up, and thanks for doing it for me.
I adore you.
Rick, thanks for joining, buddy.
Thank
See you guys. Bye, everybody.
All right, see you,
Good
Rick.
to see you, Gary.
Thanks, Rick. Great to see you, buddy.
Yeah, and we'll wrap it up in a minute, guys. We've been on for about 90 minutes, and I knew it was going to go long once we had our special guests join us. So
That's starting to wear off a little bit.
you need a little.
I didn't want to say anything.
John,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just have to, since I have Gary here. Do you mind if I ask him a question real quick?
Of course not.
Oh.
No, come on.
Gary, so nice to meet you. I just want to know, when you're sitting behind Jeff, all those gigs, like what was, like, on the Toto records, his balance, like he had the perfect pop drummer balance with the kick and the snare and the hats down lower. And when you watch him on video, I never saw him live. When you sat behind him, was he produced? Does that sound come out of the kit just like that?
Yeah. He, I several times in rehearsals or something, people would come by and they go, "How does he do that?" Or is that really, blah, 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 whatever. And, one day I asked him, I said, I get these guys come by, they just want to, say this or that. And he said, "Hey man, it's just the way it is." Like, how do you get so much power out of just, your stroke is not way up here, it's just so comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's magic. I mean, it's just pow, And he goes, "I don't know, you just do this." So he was very matter of fact about it,
And he wasn't like, he seemed to me like he was loud, but not super loud.
No, yeah. He was always, what you heard is how, it's not embellished or anything. And he worked hard, obviously, but you didn't look at him thinking he's really working hard, He's really, it just flowed out of him. it's kind of magic, I have to say.
Yeah.
You know, and it's-
Obviously, great technique. Yeah, I mean, just
Yeah, when he hit the cymbal, you know, he hit the cymbal. No one else. I gotta say, when I saw them with Shannon Forrest, like Shannon clearly studied that hit because he was from the audience. It looked the same. He had
Yeah.
certainly hit the crash and the ride,
Yeah.
where it was like in this grip. And anyway, I'm geeking out. So.
no, that's cool, Joe. That's a great question.
Yeah.
I'm glad
That's
you asked
really
that.
nice. Yeah.
he
That's
did.
nice.
You know, I don't know what to say. But it was to see it in person was really great. You know, really great fun. You learn a lot just from just that. You know, I mean, I came from the playing side, and it was really hard for me to hang out with him in a sense that I didn't want to just talk about drums. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't hang out with Jeff and just talk about drums. How boring could you be? But you know, there were so many things that you'd want to say or ask him, or you know, like. But in the end, really, it was quite frankly just obvious. You know, if you sat there with him, you would just go, yeah, of course. You know. And
Yeah, it was hard to interview him because of that. Because he
Yeah.
would just come up with answers like
just him.
it just is.
Yeah, he didn't, you know,
Yeah.
it wasn't something that he brought in. It was him. You know, he was the living embodiment of all that.
You know, the
Is
great,
that corny to say that, or I don't know.
you know, the great
Yeah,
players,
no, that's
natural players, they don't, you know, I don't even think they realize where it comes from, you know, the
Yeah.
Well, the
great,
thing is, you know, he was about the music. He wasn't about the playing.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, and like Robyn pointed out, you know, he could play. He was asked many times, man, you could, you know, play this kind of fusion-y stuff or that. He goes, he could do it. I've seen it a few times in rehearsals where he would just cut loose because it just felt like something he wanted to do. And the guys would just stop and we would all just stand there and watch, you know, but, you know, it was also like, you know, it was great. It was so great.
You know, you have to study, even though we know it's like personality, like it's natural, you have to study it just because it's so great. Like, and even I go through with my students, like the song Stop Loving You, like there's places in that song where every other drummer would have been playing fills. And he's like, nope,
Mhm.
I'm going to make you wait for one. You know, then Luke plays the lick. He doesn't play it. He waits,
Right.
wait till the last one, you know, like
Yeah.
those taste things, like the feel, but also the choices, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I could go
Yeah.
on, just,
But
Yeah.
you know, that's the same thing with Gadd, right? I mean, Steve's that way, Rick's that way, Vinny. I mean,
Yeah.
Steve Jordan is amazing. You know, you think he's good. Okay, he's going to do a little fill or something. No, it's just play the time, man.
yeah.
You know, you really got to understand it. You know, you just
And then when they play the fill, it's that much more special because
yeah, it
it's
means a lot
built
more,
up this
sure.
tension and this
But it's
anticipation
simply
and
all about the music. It's just the music, and
yeah.
and when you think of it that way, you don't think, wow, something's missing. You don't think that at all. It's all perfect. You know?
thanks
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say in this interview, Rob, thank you for letting me edit this book. Robyn, thank you for letting me edit this book. And Johnny D, I owe you drinks for getting me on a Zoom call with my freaking heroes today.
I'll take you up on that, Joe, just so we can have drinks together.
Thank you.
We can all do that. Yeah, no, thank you
you
guys
very
for doing
much.
this. And we are going to do a part 2. We have to, because there are so many other people like we talked about that we need to, talk to.
That
and-
would be
and-
fun. I would
and-
like
and
that.
Share stories
And celebrate Jeff.
Yeah.
As long as I can celebrate Jeff, I'm a happy girl.
Johnny,
Yeah.
thank you very much for this. It was,
oh,
and to bring in those surprises was, icing on the cake. It was a
yeah.
pretty damn big cake today,
It was a
It was
great
great.
cake. It was a
They're
great
all they're all happy to do it.
Thanks for
it was-
having me. Thanks for
yeah,
having me.
thanks for being here, everybody. And hang tight for a second. I'm going to end the stream, and then we'll say goodbye when I end the stream. So hang tight just for 1 second. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, and hope you enjoyed it. There will be a part 2, but in the meantime, don't wait for part 2 to go out and buy this book. Available at Hudson Music. Yep, Joe has his. Amazon, right? You can get it anywhere really at this point. So don't wait. It's a great gift. Buy it for yourself, buy it for somebody else.
Buy
and
it for
I'm gonna-
Jeff.
Yeah, buy it for Jeff. Absolutely. All right. See you soon, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thanks, John.
All right.